Hi, y'all. My name's Cricket. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you for letting me come to your corner of the world. It's amazing. My sobriety date is October the 19th of 1969. And you know what? I'm really grateful I've been sober that long. And y'all ought to be too. Uh, I'm really not a nice person sober, so you can imagine what it'd be like in the way I'd treat you if I were drinking. I'm not one of them alcoholics that love everybody in AA. I don't like some of y'all. It's so neat. You have to imagine, and by imagine, I don't mean make believe. You just have to think about it, and think about it with your head in your heart. How somebody like me can come to be at a place like this and sit at a table with people that care about me. Be invited to come here by someone I don't know. Get to be a part of. That's incredible. I was born, I think we're all different. I know people say we're not unique and we're not different. I think we all are. Don't shortchange God. He wasn't a boring God. He created all of us unique. He was a master artist. And I don't know about you, but I can look around this room and there's every possible color in the world right here, right now. Can look at men and women and those that are in between. And I can see it all, you know? I can absolutely see it all. There's young people, there's older people, there's people that are small, there's people that are larger, there's tall, there's short, and we've all got our experience, our strength, and our hope. I'm not always going to share with you the way I feel, but I will share with you my experience, my strength, and my hope. And in order to do that, I have to go back to where my time on earth began. And it began, I was born to a full-blooded black Irish woman that didn't like kids. But she kept taking the steps necessary to keep producing. My daddy, my real daddy, was a full-blooded Frenchman. He practiced service work. He sired 17 children. He believed in the rotation. And he'd plant the seed and move on. Leave it to someone else to carry that message. And it was kind of a unique deal. My mama was a really lucky lady. She's never known it. After she and my biological father divorced, she married a gentleman, and he had a third-grade education. And y'all, this is way back yonder in the 40s. And we made our living falling crops across the United States of America. Now, let me tell you, that was the most wonderful years of my life. I developed a friendship that I have today with the soil of the earth. I love, to this day, digging down in the ground and finding a potato. You know, that God could take something, just an eye of something, and plant it in the ground, and the ground cracks and says, I give it up. And you put your fingers down in there and you dig, and it's cool, and all of a sudden you find a whole potato. And to me, that's miraculous. We're a lot of things. I hear people talking over there a while ago about putting a GT something on a camera to do a court. And I'm thinking, when's the last time you dug for a potato? You know what the truth is? Man can do a whole lot of things, but it can't make dirt. And that's where it all comes from, and that's where it's all going to go back to. And as we followed these crops and I was developing that friendship, I also learned to develop some skills that have carried me through my entire life up to this point. My family, it was the type of family where it's safer to go outside at night when it's dark. than it was to stay inside. Because we didn't know what was outside, but we knew what was inside. There's 17 children in my family. None of us like each other very much, except for me and one brother. But that's because they're all wrong and I was right. I guess that might qualify me for Al-Anon. But let me tell you something. We had some advantages that some people are never going to have. We heated our homes with the old wood stove. We didn't have indoor plumbing. If y'all ever get a chance to visit the women's bathroom here, there's some neat stuff going on in that women's bathroom. Marvelous new contraptions. They've got a seat for the women that raises you up so you can dangle your feet off the floor. It's amazing. See, I come from the outhouse, and the upper class had 2 holes. We had one. They had toilet paper, we had newspaper. Didn't matter, serve the same purpose. And as we followed crops and we had that old wood stove and we had all those experiences, I found that I could always find a safe place. So from the age of about 7 or 8, I learned to crawl behind that old wood stove and hide away. And behind that old wood stove, y'all, I had blonde hair. And I've never dyed my hair in my life, but I had blonde hair behind that old wood stove. And I had clear skin because we didn't have water and we didn't have soap, and I had horrible skin, but not behind the old wood stove. Behind the old wood stove, my skin was clear. Behind the old wood stove, I wasn't the shortest girl in the classroom. I wasn't any different from anybody else behind the old wood stove. And I was behind that old wood stove, I guess I was about 11 or 12. God and I didn't communicate very well back then. I didn't understand him. Don't really understand him today, but I like him a lot today. But I stayed behind that old wood stove, and I went before this God that I heard about, because I'd heard about him. Crop followers go to church on a regular basis, just like most alcoholics say. We went twice a year, regularly. Let me tell you when and why. We went at Thanksgiving time and we went at Christmas because preachers would stand behind the pulpit. I mean, I went to them hand clapping, foot stomping, get excited about Jesus churches, and I admire that. I have to be real honest with you. I love anybody that has the courage of their own personal convictions. But I went to church and I heard this preacher say one time, anything I prayed for in the name of Jesus, I'd receive. And I thought, that's neat. Anything I pray for in the name of Jesus, I'm going to receive it. And I listened and he said that. And so I prayed. And you know what I wanted more than anything in the whole wide world? I wanted skin that I didn't have to cover my face with my hands when you looked at me. I wanted skin that you wouldn't look away from me in disgust when you looked at my face. And so in my little girl naivety, if you will, I went home, and our homes were little one-room places with a kitchenette. That's just the way it is in the life of the crop follower. And I found this little mirror, and I looked in it and put my finger on a spot that didn't have a zit, and I prayed, just like the preacher said, in the name of Jesus. When I wake up in the morning, make the rest of my face as clear as this spot is right here. And I woke up in the morning and there was a zit right where I prayed. You know what? That told me Jesus didn't like me either. And so I went to him with a prayer shortly thereafter. And it was pretty much verbatim, Dear God, sir, my name's Crystal. And I don't believe in you. And I don't believe in family. I don't believe in goodness. And I don't believe in cleanliness. But just in case you are, this is my very last prayer to you, sir. Help me to never feel again. And I don't want any favors from you, big boy. I don't want to even feel good. By the time I walked into the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous at the age of 28, that prayer had been answered in its entirety. I was incapable of feeling any normal human emotion. Two of my older brothers around the same time frame had become businessmen. They were professional men. They were robbers. uh, and at that time, it was a lucrative career. They made their own hours. There wasn't as much competition as there is today. Uh, it was harder to get caught. It was before the onset of the computers and the electric things that watch you wherever you go. Don't smoke in the hotel. It's $250 because they got the little watchy things. I checked. But they came behind my wood stove because that's where they get their money. That's where they get their guns. And they brought me a present. I was about 11 or 12 years of age. And they said, we're giving you a gift. And my family's not a gift-giving family. And I said, okay. And they gave me a little brown paper sack with a little bottle of whiskey in it. Well, I don't remember drinking before that. So I didn't have any proper rearing on the protocol for drinking your first bottle of whiskey. Being a non-troubled young woman, I remember so vividly taking the top off that bottle of whiskey, putting that bottle up to my mouth and drinking it. If y'all never had the experience and feel like drinking again, try whiskey straight. It burns all the way down. It burned all the way back up again. Burned all the way back down again. And I drank it until the bottle was empty. And that's the way I drank from that age until the day I walked into the fellowship 16 years later. At the age of 12, I left home. I started living on the streets of Denver, Colorado, which is where we wound up, doing whatever I had to do to get that next drink of alcohol. The state of Colorado interfered, and I understand today it's politically correct to say intervene. Well, they can intervene on you. They interfered with me. And they said young girls don't live the lifestyle I was living. So they took me from the streets of Denver, Colorado to Morrison, Colorado, and put me in the state reform school for girls because I was incorrigible. I didn't know what that meant, but I knew that I was going to reform school. And I went into this place, and it was amazing. They had indoor toilets. We used to take a bath in a galvanized tub in the middle of the kitchen floor, heat a bucket of water on the old wood stove, dumping it. Well, after several kids, you're dirtier coming out than when you go in that water. But that was our bathtub. And this one had a great big old white bathtub, and you turn on these faucets, and the water stays in there. And when you're done, you pull a plug, and the water goes away, and somebody else takes a bath. 3 meals every day. Every day. And I thought, my God, I love being punished. This is the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. And I stayed there for a while, and I guess I became corrigible, and they released me. And I went right back to the streets of Denver, Colorado, doing whatever I had to do to get that next drink of alcohol. At the age of 16, the state of Colorado interfered one more time. They did not recognize teenage alcoholism back then. So they said, young girls don't live the lifestyle I was living. So they took me to the Colorado State Insane Asylum in Pueblo, Colorado. They had to diagnose me. This is back in the middle 50s. They diagnosed me as schizophrenic with paranoid reaction, psychotic tendencies. I thought, I'm only 16. You know, that sounds almost like a PhD to me. To make me not be those things, the well-educated, well-trained people gave me 50 milligrams of Thorazine 4 times a day, 10 milligrams of Librium 4 times a day, and 25 milligrams of Valium 4 times a day. I went up to 300 pounds. I lost the compulsion to drink. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, y'all, let me tell you what they do. They put this 16-year-old body on a gurney, and they wheeled me to something called the electric shock treatment room. 3 times a week for 18 months. They put gooey stuff on my temples and a little band around my forehead. And it had little things that went into my temples. And they would hold my body from my neck all the way down. And anyone else who was receiving a shock treatment. Sometimes we had to be medically resuscitated. We always went into grand mal seizures. But the most interesting part about that, because there was no physical pain, the most interesting part about that is the man that was paid to do that and educated to do that. He's called a psychiatrist by some circles. If you want to know my true opinion, ask me after the meeting. He'd raise his hand up to this electrical lever. And so he'd say, "Are you scared?" "Yeah, buddy." But I learned right then, don't answer the kind of questions like that. Don't answer them. About a year and a half later, right before my 18th birthday, I was released. I guess I wasn't what I used to be, because they released me. I weighed approximately 300 pounds. I could not get out into the sunshine because of the effects of the Thorazine. I had lost the ability to speak. I have brain damage, and I like my brain damage. I don't know about y'all's, but I enjoy mine because it just makes me slower than most people. It makes me more hesitant. Doesn't mean you're any brighter than I am. Please don't misunderstand me. It's just that I walk at a slower pace than most people. I'm not in a hurry to go anywhere. And I enjoy things to a different level than most people. And I'm grateful for that. I'm not kidding with you when I tell you that it doesn't take much to make my heart turn a somersault with gratitude. It doesn't take a lot for me to find the sparkle. I get to see it. I get to hear it. When I left that state hospital, I couldn't really walk very good. And I did that thing people call the Thorazine shuffle. And that hurts my heart when I hear people say that. That, and when people look at people like me on the streets and say, "But for the grace of God go I." See, that's saying God loves you more than he does me. And I don't know how blessed you are, but I'll tell you, I dug in a garbage barrel when I was young and living on the streets, and I found a piece of cantaloupe. And I remember scraping bugs off of that cantaloupe. And to this day, I've never tasted anything any juicier, any better than the gift that was left in that garbage barrel. Never. Because I knew how to be grateful even then. As I stayed off the streets, eventually I could hold my head erect again. I could walk right. I could start speaking better. When I left there, I went right back to the streets of Denver, doing whatever I had to do to get that next drink of alcohol. On October the 18th of 1969, I was in a beer joint. Now, I'm not a housewife drunk. I'd never been married before AA. Men didn't take me home. They took me places. Home is not one of them. They didn't introduce me to family. You know, they knew what my career was. The first thing I do, I was telling somebody earlier, the first thing I do when I go to a hotel is check out the bed. You know, that's what people with my career and background do. Check out the services. And I had not been married, but I've had 12 husbands since I got sober. But I have to tell you, 2 of them were my own. And that's going some for me. But I sat in this beer joint, propped up on that bar stool, and I don't know how many beer joint drinkers there are, but if you can picture the old bar stools, and they're taped together with that gray tape, and there's stuffing coming out the side a little bit on each side of that tape, and it's curling up a little bit, and you stand up, it kind of sticks to you. Have you ever seen them eggs floating in that purple water? Don't buy one. They've been there 100 years. You know, and the dark, I mean, the smokers that knew how to burn the bar, knew how to lay that cigarette so it'd leave a lasting impression. That kind of stuff. And the music. Oh, the beer joint music, designed to soothe the soul of the alcoholic cricket. Make the world go away. Get it off my shoulder. Come to AA, and sometimes I'm at a meeting and I think, well, they've changed the song. It's gloom, despair, and agony on me. You know, you get to a meeting where it's self-pity going on a lot of. That's what runs through my head. I sit on that bar stool and I mind my own business. I am not an instigator of a fight, but I'm definitely not a back downer. I've been in a few in my day. And to this day, I won't back down from one. That's just a part of cricket. But I didn't start him. This gentleman came up to me this one night and he said, "Hi, cricket. My name's Harry." And I'm thinking, and? He said, "My wife and I've watched you for a few months." And I'm, okay. "We think you have a problem drinking." And I thought, excuse me, I don't have a problem drinking. And he said, "I'll make a deal with you. If you go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous with us tomorrow night, I'll leave you alone." And I said, "Okay, big boa." Didn't dawn on me what I was getting myself in. See, I'm one of those that people vicariously lived out their own insanity through me. Dare cricket, she'll do anything. Yep, if you dare me or challenge, I can't back down. So I told this gentleman, "Okay, I'll do that." He said, "In the meantime, don't take a drink of anything containing alcohol." I said, "No problem, big boy." My sister was with me, and he got her phone number, and she allowed me to spend the night at her house that night. And I went to her home, and I crawled up in her guest bedroom in her bed, weighed 78 pounds, teeth rotting out of my head, nasty and dirty. Nasty woman, nasty woman. The next day, the phone rang. I had got up, did what I normally did every day, no matter where I woke up at, reached for my whiskey. I could not take that first drink on October the 19th of 1969. The first miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous. Hadn't prayed not to want it, just couldn't take it. I got violently ill not drinking. That idiot called my sister's house about noon. She put me on the phone. He said, "Hi, this is Harry." "Oh, you don't talk to a newcomer that way." He said, "Hello." And I said, "And?" He said, "Do you need a ride to the meeting?" I said, "Let me tell you something, big boy. I don't need anything from you. I told you I'd be at your meeting and I'll be there, but I don't need anything from you. And I'd never driven. I don't have a DWI because I never drove a car. I did get a ticket for getting drunk in St. Joe, Missouri, and getting in a shopping cart on a hill and pushing off. Now, I don't know how many of you ever rode down a hill in a shopping cart, but they build up momentum. And as they're going downhill, they go faster and faster. You can't steer them and you can't stop them. You get to the bottom of the hill, and there's a squad car or two waiting, and they give you a ticket for driving a non-motorized vehicle and within 10 minutes of alcohol. So I guess I qualify. But because I didn't have a license, I didn't have a car, I told that gentleman that I needed nothing, and I called a taxi cab. And it took me to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous at 1311 York Street in Denver, Colorado. And I never will forget my first AA meeting. I know people say they walk in and they saw all these smiling faces. I saw lunatics laughing at things that weren't even funny. And you know the worst part about it? They were touching one another. Excuse me? You don't do that. And so I did what I do best. I sat on the back row of their meeting. They passed their little wicker baskets, and when I was a newcomer, they used to say, If you've got it, put it in. If you need it, take it out. If your group says that, sit on the back row. That's where the money's at. They said, take what you need now, what you don't need now, come back and get it later. Okay, I'll do that. Took your money. Now, it was housed in a club. And so I waited, came back to get what I needed later, broke into the office, stole the office machinery, took it to the pawn shop, locked it, came back with a crowbar to get in the Coke machine about a week later. Now, by this time, I've got long-term sobriety, 3 weeks. They're having emergency group consciences, emergency steering committees. Let's kick her out. We can't. Let's kick her out. We can't. Our traditions are. Yeah, and I don't know that that's all going on, but I'm about to get me a Coke and some quarters. And I get approached by a group of the men. And they said, Cricket, we're not tolerating your stuff any longer. And I thought, thank God. I've been sober so long, I think I'm going to die. But if they kick me out, I'm not breaking the dare to Harry. I've already got it's the first drink that gets you drunk figured out. And in my head at that time, it made sense. I'm going back to my beer joint, crawl up on my bar stool. I'm going to order 2 and have them sit down at the 1, 2. I'm going to throw that first drink away and I'm going to start with the second. It makes no sense today, but back then that made perfect sense to me. And I assure you, it made perfect sense to me. They said, we want to kick you out. And I said, probably the first time I'd been pleasant to them, okay. Because see, I came into AA with 2 prejudices. I did not like red-haired women. And so I'd get them. I mean, if you don't like somebody, you get them. If they say hello to you. And I didn't like lesbians. Telling you, one of the miraculous parts about recovery, I sponsor red-haired women. And I sponsor lesbian women. God doing for me what I could not do for myself. And not only that, I genuinely care about all of them. But they didn't want me in their group. And they told me that I couldn't hit the women anymore. That I had to pay back the money I stole from the basket. That I had to pay back the money I'd panhandled. That I had to take my price list away from the men. And I said, you mean John and John and John and John? They said, yes. And I said, okay, I'll do that. Because, see, I want them to kick me out. But I can't. It's got to be their decision. Well, about a few weeks later, I'm approached by the narcotics division of the Denver Police Force and told I had to leave Denver. And I said, okay, big boys, where am I going to go? And by this time, I guess I had about 6 months in. They said I was moving to Fort Worth, Texas. It was like, have any of y'all ever been kicked in the guts where it just takes all the wind out of you and you lay there and you suck in? Well, it's like somebody gut kicked me. And I said, why would I go to Texas? I never went there drunk. And they said, that's why. I said, okay, I'm going to go on 3 conditions. I want a high school diploma because I've got a 4th grade education. They said, okay. And I come from the outhouse. So I want a case of the softest toilet paper you can find. And they said, okay. I come out of the shopping cart. I want a car with a driver's license. Let me tell you what these narcotics officers did. They bought me a 58 Rambler station wagon, a case of soft toilet paper. They took me to this lady and she read me questions about 30 minutes and said, congratulations, you passed your GED. They wanted me out of Denver real bad. And I had to pass a driving test, y'all. And I couldn't do it because I've got 2 legs. That's just the way God made me. And that car had 3 pedals. I could have made a fortune working the streets if I'd known how to do what they were wanting me to do with that car. I'm telling you, they were saying push here, pull back. Hey, excuse me. So I went in day after day after day, Monday through Friday, day after day after day. I walked in there one day, just like in an AA group, there are bleeding deacons. And some of them work at the driver's license place. And I walked in, and all them boys looked at me and said, I'm not getting in the car with her. But that one, just like at an AA group, when we give up on somebody, there's usually one person who's still willing to help them and still willing to work with them. Still one person in that room. And this one old guy said, that's okay, boys. I'm going to take her out. And we went out and got in that car, and he said, Cricket, crank it up. I turned that key, and he said, congratulations. You get your driver's license. So me, my sister, my toilet paper, and my GED drove from Denver, Colorado to Fort Worth, Texas, using the gear you started in and then skip a gear in the third gear. So we knew not to park it where you couldn't jump, because that car's going to jump on its own when I went from that to that. And I drove all the way to Fort Worth with my sister, and I leave Colorado and keep driving, and all of a sudden, it's flat. The world just flat. There's not even a hill, let alone a mountain. And my sister said, look, it says dangerous crosswinds. I said, what? Tumbleweeds. You know, and they think I'm nuts. They're sending me off here. Thank God I've had toilet paper, because what I heard they used was really bad. And I drive in, I do the next thing I'm supposed to do. I found a place for my sister and me to live. And I called an AA group. And I said, I need directions to your group, when the man answered the phone in a very nasty way, saying, Alcoholics Anonymous may help you. I said, I need directions to your group. He said, do you need a ride? I said, is that what I asked you for, big boy? I need directions to your group. And I hitchhiked, because when I went down to start the car, I cracked a block or something. Anyway, the car wouldn't go anywhere again. And so I hitchhiked from the far east side of Fort Worth to the far southwest side of Fort Worth, Texas. And I walked into my first Texas AA meeting, and a red-haired lady came walking up to me. And you know, this really was her fault. And to this day, I'm not going to sway from that. She put her arms out like this, and she said, hello, darling. Oh, it just gave me the creepy crawlies. And it still gives me the creepy crawlies. She thought she was going to hug me. And so I knocked on her rear end. And I began a 6-year visitation to Southwest Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. And thank God they tolerated my behavior for a while. I was instrumental in that group voting at their group conscience to install a floor safe, because the money kept disappearing. And just all kinds of rules and regulations. When I was sober 6 or 7 years, somebody got a resentment. They went to Southwest Group and they torched it. You know, and everybody automatically, I have no idea why they automatically assumed I did that. I have never set an AA group on fire yet. I just haven't done it. I'm not telling you I never will. I haven't done it yet. The group had to move. I couldn't make the move with it, y'all. So I went to another group that's housed in a club, and it's called the Harbor. And I knew before I went there, I was told they would never accept a woman like me, that I would never fit in. They were educated people. They were upper-class alcoholics. Now, come on. A puking drunk's a puking drunk. I don't care what kind of sheets they say on. You know? But I walked into Harbor, and this red-haired lady came walking up to me. She was absolutely the most precious gift I've ever received. She said, "Hi, Cricket. I'm Betty G, and I'm going to be your sponsor." Oh, excuse me, woman? I've been sober 7 or 8 years. She said, "Oh, I'm not taking it away from you. Let's go back here in the office, and if I think you understand the program of recovery as outlined in the first 164 pages, I'll leave you alone." I said, "Okay, woman." We went back in the office, and Betty G opened up the big book. She's a judge's daughter. I'm a crop puller's kid. She went to finishing school. I went to reform school. She went to college. I went to the insane asylum. Normally, people that would not mix. She hands me that big book and says to me, she opens it, "Please read me the first portion of chapter 5 here." And I started reading. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. And I read all the way through the ABCs. She was going to know I didn't need a sponsor. And she took the big book away from me and she closed it and she said, "Cricket, darling, you can't read." And once again, that gut kick. I said, "Wait a minute, woman. I just read you the first portion of chapter 5. She said, "No, I had it open on chapter 3. Let me tell you about that group of men and women that would never accept a woman like me. Some of the wealthiest people in Fort Worth, Texas, some of the smartest people in Fort Worth, Texas, some of the best educated people, and some other crickets sitting in that room, very diversified group of people. Let me tell you what they did. They took me into the coffee room and set me at the coffee table. And Betty G took me to a university, into a thing called remedial reading. Every month at the coffee tables at Harbor Group, I sat and they brought me that Reader's Digest. And it had a thing in it called Word Power. And I'd have to sound out the words. I can pick up almost anything today and read it. And I'm not ashamed of my hesitation when I read. For the most part, I can sound out any word, and I do know how to use a dictionary. They taught me how to use the proper utensils for eating. Betty made me change the way I dressed. She said, "You're not going to look like something that's selling it on the streets anymore." I learned how to say yes, ma'am, and yes, sir. Not out of deference because I think you're better than I am or because I think you're older than I am, but out of respect that God created you uniquely you is why I say yes, ma'am, to the women and yes, sir, to the men. I stayed at that group, gave birth to my first and only daughter. They taught me how to not hurt her because there's something inside of me that alcohol put to sleep, but still was alive and kicking. And when I had that child at home, and I called my sponsor and said, "You need to come and get her because I'm going to hurt her. And if I start, I'm not going to be able to stop." She said, "Cricket, I didn't know." Shortly thereafter, some Al-Anons and alcoholic people came to my home. Let me tell you about soothing that monster that lived inside of me. They taught me how, when my child was irritating me so bad that I could feel my jaws tensing up and my back and my body getting rigid and saliva forming, to put the child in a safe place and walk outside and sing out loud or talk out loud or do something and stop and see if that monster was still throbbing and pulsating with that anger. I have to do that at group conferences now and then. I, I just did. But I tried that. I can stand before you and tell you truthfully, my child has never lain in the floor and seen a foot come upside her foot. I've never called her out of her name, and I've never told her I hated her. I've never looked on that little girl in disgust and said, "I hate you." Never. Thank God. I stayed sober at that group, and let me tell you, God uprooted me at Harvard, and he taught me the true miracle of gardening. The true miracle of gardening. I thought I knew it because I was a crop puller's kid. The true miracle of gardening is learning what needs to be pulled out of that garden so that the rest of it can flourish the way it's supposed to. The true miracle is that if I've got a weed in there that makes me look in condemnation on any other human being, I better pull that weed out of my garden. If I don't, then that blossom called serenity is not going to have room to grow. If I have anything inside of me, any of the old character defects that stops it from growing the way it's supposed to grow, I'm going to fragment and be what I was when I came here. It was like I was a jigsaw puzzle, broken into 1,000 little pieces, and they dumped me on the floor of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's like God said to that group of people, it's okay. You all go ahead, build that border around her. Just build that border and start putting the pieces together. And that one part that's always missing in this woman, this cricket, that is the heart. I'll find it and I'll put it in there for you. For many, many, many years, my heart was like a heart of stone. I felt nothing. And when they did that and they treated me the way they did, at that time, God took out of me that heart of stone and He put in me a heart of flesh. Now, I can tell you this in this brief period of time, but this actually took several years to transpire at Harbor. And when that heart of flesh put in me, I started feeling bad if I hurt you. Up until this point in my life, anytime you touch my hands in AA, as soon as possible, I ran to a bathroom and I used the hottest water I could to wash you off of me. I didn't want you touching me, so I had to wash you off of me. Since she did that and they did that, I sat there and started looking at everything differently. And I looked at this lady who gave me spiritual life. If you don't have a sponsor that you trust more than anyone in the world, I'm sorry. If you don't have a sponsor that you feel loves you, Betty G loved me enough that to her it didn't matter if I hated her. She loved me enough until I could learn to work the steps of recovery. Under her tutelage, I couldn't have done it alone. Under her tutelage, with many years of sobriety, I found out what being powerless over alcohol was all about. And I didn't have to take another drink ever since I walked in these doors. But I was still and still am powerless over alcohol, and my life's unmanageable. And with many years of sobriety, I got to come to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. Do you know what a promise that is? There's a power greater than myself that can restore me to sanity. I can't vote. I can't serve on a jury because some of my behavior before AA was considered inappropriate. So they took some privileges away, and that was 2 of them. But the biggest thing was my sponsor allowed me to make a decision all on my own to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood Him. I got to make that decision, y'all. I got to decide whether or not to do that. I got to make a fearless and thorough moral inventory. I got to admit to God, myself, and another human being the exact nature of my wrongs. I got to really look at my shortcomings and character defects. I got to follow that journey all the way through to those 12 steps. My sponsor at this time became very ill, and I started giving back to Betty G. And bless her heart, her face was all cracked, kind of the way mine's getting. And I got to go over and do things for her. And she was a stickler about the program, about making amends. I said, Betty G, I can't make amends to some people. I don't remember who they were, because I used to steal checks out of the mail and have my sister write names on the back of them, and I'd cash it. They frowned upon that. And I said, how can I make amends to that? She said, well, every Saturday night when you're in town and you're down at Harbor, you're going to call bingo for the seniors that like to play bingo, and you're not going to get paid for it. 7 years I called bingo. If you think I stole your check, please let me know and I'll make payment arrangements. I don't want to call you your bingo. I don't know how to send you that. I went over on a Valentine's night and put this long, tall, gangly, beautiful woman in a lavender nightgown, fed her sausage and biscuits, took her upstairs and tucked her in her bed, and the tear came out her eye, and it went down one of them God cracks. And I put my finger on it and tried to trace it back. And you can't find the source of a sponsor's tears because they come from so deep down inside. And she looked at me and she said, "Cricket, darling, you know I love you." I looked into the eyes of my sponsor, and for the first time in my life, I looked at another human being and I said, "Betty G, I love you too." The next day, I went to my sponsor's home and found her dead on her bathroom floor in her lavender nightgown. And I knelt down beside her. In my selfishness, I said, "What do I do?" This woman loved me beyond imagination. She saw something in me no one had ever beheld before. She knew that deep down inside there was a core of goodness. I didn't know that. And she had started the master weeding job. And they took Betty G away. And they put her wherever they put her, down in the ground somewhere in Ozona, Texas. And I remember way, way back yonder, when I was a little girl, following crops, one of the men that followed the crops with us. Beautiful, satiny, mahogany skin. And he'd look at me and he'd say, "Cricket, someday you'll mount up to the wings of an eagle. You're going to run and not be weary. You're going to walk and not faint. But you got to wait." And I looked at Ike and I said, "Okay, Ike." And when they put Betty down, I mean, they're not like an animal down, but when they put Betty away, she mounted up with the wings of an eagle. I believe that I'm the most blessed woman any of y'all are going to ever meet. I believe I'm the richest woman that y'all are ever going to meet. I live in a little loft apartment on early Social Security. I have Medicare. What a gift. I can actually go to a doctor. A few years back, I was diagnosed with cancer. I'm grateful it went into remission. Some people are and some aren't. I'm one of the ones that is. And I had another experience with many, many years of continuous sobriety. I had to leave my home. And see, I lived in a little y'all house that I made every payment on. I lived in a neighborhood that I was the only white person. The rest was Hispanics. And the little Mexican children, the little Mexican babies would come to my house. And guess what we did? I taught them how to read. They came running across one afternoon. This little bitty Mexican girl in about 4th grade. She was so excited. "Miss Cricket, Miss Cricket." I said, "What, Maudie?" So she says, "Miss Cricket, we got an A." Can you imagine? We got an A. The excitement for me. No 2 rooms in my house were the same color. Sue's been there. I had a purple bathroom, a yellow kitchen, a green bedroom, a bright turquoise blue bedroom, a pink dining room, an orange living room, and a dull white upstairs. And the outside of it was yellow that would stop a car. It was my corner of the world. I had it all. I had my rainbow. I had 17 windows. Had a beautiful daughter that was married at this time, and I have the grandson. And when I was diagnosed, and I saw what it was doing to the people that loved me the most, because I hate death sentences, because even when you're on death row, they change that crap all the time. So you're always left with when's it really going to happen? Is it going to happen? When's it going to happen? And when they did that, and I'm seeing people, and my daughter's got eyes. She's got just eyes that feel. And when she'd look at me and she'd get leaky, and I'd look up and her eyes would be leaky, and people I sponsor and people at Harbor and people from Southwest. And they'd say, Cricket. And you could see the pain. And I knew my dying was hurting them. And I couldn't get some of what I needed in Texas. And I made a decision to leave. And I went to live in Ringwood, Illinois with my dear friend. And I walked out of that rainbow. And I looked at my daughter and my ex-husband and his wife and some of the women I sponsored and my little Mexicans. And I thought, God, I can't do this. I can't do this. I know I've been a survivor. And this is one of the few times in my life where I almost crumbled. And I told him, this rug's just about ready to crumble. See, sir, I'm going to fall on that floor. And I'm going to become a nothing again. Because I can't stand seeing this. Now, I don't know how many of y'all have ever had the Ringwood experience. It's unusual. It's unique. And what a tremendous blessing it was. Please understand, I met a dog in Ringwood, Illinois, named Finn. And this dog walked up to me, and I don't know why dogs do this, and turned its back to me and backed up and sat down on my lap. When I went to bed that first night there, I woke up and felt something kissing me all over the face. Well, the only other person in that house was her. And she wasn't licking all over my face. She was in her bedroom and heard me laughing. This dog was loving me. And I believe that the dog, Sue's son, her daughter and son-in-law, her grandson, and some of the other people that I met there, I think once again, God was molding me. I know what my garden is. I've spoke at a lot of places, a lot of times. And the only thing that I know for sure and for certain is that I can't teach what I don't know. This comes from way back in the day. I can't lead where I don't go. I can't give what I ain't got. And I can't be what I am not. And it's okay for me today to be Cricket. I used to not like the women in Alcoholics Anonymous. And most women alcoholics don't like other women alcoholics. You know what we do? We look at each other and while her hair would look better if she'd just do this. Oh, she thinks those colors match. I know she's got a push-up on, just showing it all off. We do that. We do that. But, I'm a little bit odd, maybe. I'm going to die with just a touch of the slut on me, And that's okay. I love ladies. I think ladies are just miraculous and they're so much fun to watch. But that's just not me. That's just not me. I have a good time. I like you boys. I like you a lot. I love the way you smell. I love the way you feel. Most of you just can't afford me. And that's okay. Let me tell you in a nutshell what I owe to the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't go to jail anymore. You know why? Because I learned that I don't have a right to hurt other people. And if I steal from you, I'm hurting you. so I don't go to jail. If I shoplift, I'm hurting somebody. If I slice your tires, there's all kinds of rules and regulations behind sobriety. There's a whole lot of behaviors that have changed. I haven't been back in the insane asylum. I haven't had another shock treatment. And as bad as I hurt sometimes physically, I don't get strung out on pain medication. Although I could. And the doctor would be glad to write the script. Can't do that. You know why? I want to hear one more thunderstorm. I want to hear the lightning crackle one more time. I want to see a rainbow. I want to see the cardinals in flight. I want to see the chicken hawks go. When my friend was driving me from the airport, you know what I saw one more time? And I may never get to see it again. Soybean field. The color. Can you believe it? Just out of nowhere. Not a big one. Just a little soybean field. And my heart started going thump, 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 thump. There's a lot of things I want to do. I want to remember one day at a time. And you need to know that we are men and women who were blind. And now we see. It's called Amazing Grace. We were lame and now we walk. We just do. Because that's what God wants for us. Celine Dion sang a song and it's became one of my very favorites. I love Louis L'Amour westerns. I like spitting tobacco now and then. And I still smoke cigarettes and I haven't bit one yet I don't enjoy. There's a whole bunch of things that I like doing. And she wrote this song that tells you, because I never could think of a way to tell you. And if I can try to remember it, because I've came to that point where I knew I can't do this anymore. I got up at 4 o'clock this morning to be here to speak at 8 o'clock tonight. And the old body just can't do it anymore. I still hold office in my home group. I still dump ashtrays. I still sponsor people. I go to 5 meetings a week with almost 40 years of sobriety. And I think that's enough. I can't do this part of the deal anymore. So I have to tell you, and I've said it before, you were my voice when I could not speak. Do you realize what a freedom that was? The time when my head laid over on my chest and the only sound I could make was wasn't to entertain. I could not speak. You were my strength when I was weak. Those times when I wanted so desperately to be able to reach out. I couldn't do that. You were my strength. That came from my sponsor. I'd lost my God. And you gave him back to me. If you start at this table, go through every human living being in this room, each and every one of you gave him back to me. How can I not say thank you? How can I not behold the God in you? I have to. Because if I don't behold the God in you, I will lose the God in me. That's just the way the deal works for me. There's some very, very special people here. And I'm sure each and every one of you is special, and I just don't know you. But I want to take this opportunity to thank the people of Ursuline, my dear, dear friends, my God, and Betty with G, my daughter, who's given me a grandson, who's given me a dog just like the dog in Ringwood, looks like the dog in Ringwood, loves like the dog in Ringwood. I am whole. I'm whole behind all of this that you look at, behind what you see inside, it's whole again. And you made it that way. You never know. what influence you're going to have. I know they tell you can't get anybody drunk and you can't keep them sober. That may be true. But have you ever considered that you might be a contributing factor to either way that goes? If there's a woman in your group like I used to be, do you have the courage to love her into being one, to helping her, love her and helping her into becoming one of them? Can your group work with another cricket? Can you take a man off the street that walks into your group that smells bad and his nose is running? Can you touch his hand? Can you? I don't know. I know I can. I can do that. And you know how I feel when I do that? I feel so clean. And when I go to bed at night, I get to say, God, did I get to do anything for any of your kids today? Every now and then the answer is yes. The answer is yes. Don't just look at the way we look on the outside. Listen to our hearts. And if our words can't say it, if it's an look beyond that. Say, I need you to reach out to me. I may not need your help getting down off of this stool, but I needed your help. And you gave it freely to get down off of that other stool. You held me up. I almost don't want to stop because it's to hear. Thank you for the experience. Thank you for my life. Thank you for my sanity. Thank those of you who care about me and tell me so. And tell me so. Don't be afraid to touch me if you're going to touch me appropriately. Now, how you got humor out of that, I'll never know. If you're going to touch me inappropriately, I only accept cash. What I'm truly saying is don't be afraid to be a part of my life. Don't be afraid to be a part of that. Don't be afraid to reach out your hand and touch somebody's life and change it forever. Because there is one of us out there coming in your door at some point. And it may be the person with 42 years who someday sitting there and his head's hurting so bad he can't stand it. He's lost another dear friend. Don't be afraid to reach out your hand and change this life. You are God's kids. And whether you like it or not, I'm part of you. Thank you very, very much.